Good morning from Vietnam, Johanna. Good afternoon to you. Thanks a lot for spending your late afternoon, early evening to join our program to share your stories. Thanks, and on behalf of the listeners around the world, we're gonna say thank you to you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Johanna, you came to our country, but you're not getting out of the country to see how beautiful our people and the city here. So the next trip, if you travel to Vietnam, you have a new friend, new family here. All right, it's me. Okay, so you let us
Perfect.
know, and we would love to take you around. Okay.
Yeah, next time I won't just stay in the airport.
Yes, and for a little taste of our culture in here, it's very honored if we can have you to share a little bit about who you are and the work you love doing. Would you do it for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Johanna Feick. I'm in my late 20s. I'm a product manager in software technology. And I just last year moved from Germany to the US. And beyond, being a product manager, what I really enjoy is I like writing music, I like reading. I also like mentoring other product managers and writing about product management. So I would say I have a pretty wide range of things that I enjoy doing in order to have, a complete life.
Wow. Joanna, you have an amazing journey that you share with us in less than 60 seconds. Do you know that? And it's not fair for our audience. So this conversation is designed for everybody to know a little bit more about your life, about your journey, about your dreams, about your talents. Okay, and so we are going to travel time together a lot in this conversation. How does that sound to you?
Perfect. I'm excited for it.
Alrighty, so let me lead the way. When I was little, I grew up in a city called Da Nang, so it's a very small city in the middle of the country. And so we grew up in a very poor community. So one night we might have electricity, and then the next day or two we might not have it, or we did not have it, right? So the only entertainment for me at night, when is dark out there, is when we see the moon, and then we can see things brightly everywhere. It's really, really cool. So my first dream about the future works that I'm going to do is to become an astronaut, and travel to the moon seems to be so cool, right? But life did not give me any opportunity to do things like that, except I've been interviewed many, many astronauts in the program. One of them was the youngest man who ever walked on the moon, also himself. So for you, when you were little, what was your first dream about the future works that Joanna gonna bring to the world?
So as a child, I really liked dancing and singing and playing piano. Like I started to, write like poetry at age 7 or 8, started writing my first little piano songs at 10. And then at 13, I started writing lyrics as well. So my first dream was actually to grow up to be a pop star. Very common dream, I think.
Okay, from that dream until what you're doing today, there's huge gaps in between. And I believe that you're still doing the music part, like you said earlier, right? You're still writing lyrics and stuff. So tell us how that original dream of being a pop star to becoming a leaders in the the new phase of leaders in the new era. Tell us the journey.
How much detail do you want? Do you want all the details?
As much as people, because people would love to hear the things that they don't know of you.
Yeah, honestly, it was quite a journey, right? So from wanting to be a pop star or like a singer, musician, throughout, I would say, all my early and also late teens, I honestly just ended up traveling a little bit after I finished high school. I wanted to see the world. I think that was also a big part of my TEDx talk, right? That I hadn't really seen a lot of the world yet. I hadn't traveled. And I always kind of grew up in a bit of an environment where I was told, oh, people like us, like we don't do that, right? But I didn't really want that to be my life. So I started looking for opportunities to make things happen. So how this whole transition really started was that I bought a ticket to fly to South Korea and lived there on a work and travel visa for around a year. And I did a lot of things there. I did anything from like modeling a little bit to ultimately working for a startup. And that is how I found my second passion. And that is startups and ultimately product management, which is super connected to that. So I started working for the startup. I did marketing because I had a background in marketing. I had been a content creator from age, I would say 17 to 19, where I was already building up like a fairly big fan base in my specific niche. Like I was being invited to events and so on, right? So I had some skills that I had acquired during my late teens, and that opened the doors for my first job. But I honestly quite quickly realized that I don't really see myself being a marketer long term. And working for a startup really made me start to think about all of these opportunities that we have. Like I noticed so many problems all around us, and I started to thinking about solutions. And so the first thing that I really came across was, because I was a former content creator, that I wanted to build a platform that helps content creators make money. That was ADPList. That was, I think I had the first idea around 2018, but it all took quite some time to polish that idea, like write my first business plan and ultimately find co-founders, right? But I learned a lot during that time, and I would say how it really became and shifted towards product management and me being in tech as a long-term career was when I founded my second company, VideoVisit, or like technically we called it VideoBesuch, which is German for video visit, but I thought VideoVisit is a little bit easier to pronounce. And I would say that is how it really then started, because that solidified a lot of my ideas and passions, and I would say also where I saw strengths within myself at that time at a still very early career, right? And with VideoVisit, the big thing was that it was all so much of a coincidence, to be honest. We were all just like the pandemic had like started, the lockdown had started in, I think, February or early March, maybe 2020. And the German government did this really big hackathon. In a few days or weeks, they basically had the biggest hackathon ever, like in the world, with, I think, over 48,000 registrations, over 20,000 participants. And as part of my previous engagement with ADPList, I had met a bunch of other entrepreneurs within the range of like Cologne and Düsseldorf where I was living. And some of them were asking around, oh, hey, does anyone want to participate in that hackathon for the weekend? I thought about it and was just like, okay, why not, right? So we spent that weekend thinking about who really needs help right now. And we kind of came to a conclusion that especially the elderly population is really overlooked. So there were a lot of news around the fact that they were very secluded during the lockdown, meaning that there were literally people in Germany during the lockdown period that died within nursing homes without being able to say goodbye to their families, which is like a very big, like emotional, right, crisis. And we thought about that and we started thinking about solutions together, the four of us, right? And what we really came across was the reason why there hadn't been any solution was the elderly, most of the elderly people in nursing homes don't have a smartphone. So they don't know how to use the device. And then on the other hand, there were a lot of like concerns around data privacy in Germany. And a lot of the options like Zoom and so on, they weren't exactly GDPR conform or Church Privacy Act conform, which is an even stricter one. So we started up to build the solution. I don't want to go too much into technical details, but we basically built this automated video call and scheduling software that was specifically focused on nursing homes, where basically the situation was that you had a single tablet for like all the people in the nursing home. So you needed to schedule and plan on Who are you bringing this to when, and all of these things. And we made a lot of assumptions initially, but thankfully we were one of the winners of this hackathon. So we got a lot of attention all of a sudden, and we're able to secure a partnership with a Vodafone. So a what is it called? Basically like a phone company, right?
Yes.
And together with them, we started working with one of the nursing homes, pivoted the product, and they really liked what we were building. So as soon as we had done our pilot like test program with them, we started rolling it out to all of these other nursing homes. And then that got us even more press attention. So we got even more partnerships, right? So it was kind of just like going like all the way up and up and up, because we were one of the few solutions that were actually specifically targeted as a segment. And it was such a specific use case that it only existed during the COVID-19 crisis. And we always knew that. We knew that after this is all like said and done, that the company wouldn't have like any product market fit anymore, that people wouldn't be like interested in it as much. But that was also why there was no solution for it. So that really allowed us to come in and help a lot of people. Like we ended up serving, I would say, people in over 30 countries. We had over 300 nursing homes signed up with us. We worked with a lot of big corporate partners. In one of our initiatives, I think even the German government was involved in that.
Wow.
To a degree, like they signed off on it. You had this little thing that says, oh, there's like MediaMarkt Saturn, and then a VideoVisit and the German technical consulting. And then it was signed off basically by Dorothee Bär, which is the digital like representative of the German government. So it was like this big banner and this big initiative that we did. And that was really exciting because we got so much positive feedback. And I think that is when I noticed that this is something that I'm also really excited about, that there are things beyond music that I can be very excited about. And that's how I ultimately really like shifted my career towards tech, which frankly, technically, it was an entire coincidence that I even ended up in technology to start with, because it was simply the first company that gave me a chance, happened to be a technology company. But later on, I actually realized that I'm really passionate about the space. And the more I learned, the more enthusiastic I became about it. And I think that is maybe sort of an interesting perspective, because I think a lot of times we think that you just have to be immediately passionate about it, and that is like what's the right thing for you. But to me, I was just walking through the world with open eyes, and I was just kind of testing out different things. And ultimately, I actually ended up noticing that a job that maybe I even had taken to a degree out of necessity or because it was the first opportunity I could get, ended up being something that I was genuinely excited about. Like I genuinely liked the company and the team, and it allowed me to grow. And I ended up finding this whole new passion and strength.
Wow. Johanna, thanks a lot for sharing the beautiful journey. And here it's beauty because it's a journey of self-discovering, right? So you say yes to opportunity, and from there, starting to figure out along the way everything that you touch and everything that you touch and have the experience, you make the best out of that. And that is why we create this video, this program, for people to see if they have an opportunity to touch on something, how could they learn from Johanna to make the best of it. So allow me to bring you to the moment that you bought the one-way ticket.
It was not a two-way ticket, but
it's the ticket. So there's 200 plus countries in the world, right?
Yeah.
Why South Korea at the beginning?
Right. So honestly, originally I had just gone to a short trip to Japan and South Korea. That is kind of how it started. I traveled a little bit there. I honestly also really just liked Korean music. I liked the food. But the key point to me was that while I was traveling, I could feel a change within myself. And I had this feeling that told me, you need to come back here. There is something that you need to learn about yourself, about life. It was this very strong feeling. And I'm like, I usually like to be like super rational and strategic, but I could just tell, okay, this is important. And I think what that was is that I was young, right? I was like 19. I was like still a child. I was really stuck in the mindset that I grew up with. And that was very much a scarcity mindset, very much focused on, oh, I just can't do these things. I'm not cut out for this. I'm not good enough, whatever. So very negative to a degree. And when I traveled and I met new people, I tasted new food. These were all things that I didn't know. Like I grew up in a 1,000 person village in Germany, in one of the smallest states. Like there was not exactly a lot of diversity there, to be fair. So there were a lot of things that I didn't know, and I kind of always was told, or like I thought that I just wouldn't like those things, that that's not for me, that that's not the type of person I am. And what I realized while traveling is that I had no idea what person I actually was, and that I was like super stuck up in this concept of what I had been made to believe, who I am supposed to be, right? And I could feel that very strongly within me. So when I came back, I was like, hey, I'm going to go to South Korea for a year. And I would also say during that time in my life, I was really lost. Like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I had this idea of a goal. I didn't know how to get there. I had no one to teach me. And I think buying that ticket was the most important thing that I probably ever did, because I went there. It was really hard because I was really young. I didn't know anything. And I moved to this country where I barely spoke the language, was just able to read enough Hangul and Korean, kind of like to order some food. But it also made me go out of my comfort zone by a lot. And it made me discover so many things about myself. And I met people that had interests or that enjoyed doing things that I didn't know any people like that in Germany. I probably would have been not comfortable with that either, because that was so far removed from the reality I grew up in. And I would say basically my horizon expanded by so much that when I came back, I was just like, okay, I'm going to pave my own way, and I'm going to do whatever I believe is the best like strategy for my life. And I've basically immediately founded that company. But really the ticket, I would say that is where it all started, because that was this very important change in my behavior and my mindset, where I started to think about how can I make things happen, versus living in this world where I'm just telling myself, oh, I can't do this. And like people that, grew up in this village, like they don't do that type of stuff. And that was such a pivotal point, right?
Yeah. Wow. Johanna, you just make my goosebumps because of because this is exactly what we want to do for the people out there, to help them push the boundary and go out of their comfort zone. Really give it a little try, so to see, how breaking the old way of thinking, the thing that stop us from being excellent, right? So bring me to the moment that you landed back to Germany. We go back to your home, went back to your home after your trip to Japan and Korea. All right, because that was the first trip that ignite that seed of thinking inside of you. The thinking about, okay, you are made of belief, and then there's a lot of things that's holding you back on your way of thinking, on your way of doing things, right? And a lot of us might have that realization. Okay, might know that there's something that holding us back, but that we need to make some change in here, but not doing anything, Johanna. Just stop at that realization. for you, you make a big leap of faith to buy that ticket to spend a year in South Korea, in a country that's totally strange to you, from the language, from the food, from a lot of things, right? So
Yeah.
what happened at that particular moment?
I think that's like such an interesting question to ask, because I wasn't even that self-aware back then, right? Again, I was like 19, whatever. I wasn't that self-aware. I could just tell after I came back from my flight that something had shifted, and I could tell that it had shifted for the better. And I could also tell that it wasn't just, oh, I was on a nice vacation and now I feel better type of thing. I could feel that something within my perspective, like something in my brain, honestly, just shifted. It's as if, like traveling to an entirely different country that's like so far removed from my culture, it opened up this entire like new realm of possibilities. But I want to be completely transparent here. And I think that's one of the key points that I actually try to make in my TEDx talk is I didn't come back and I was like, I can do everything and I'm just going to do this, right? I just came back noticing that I don't really quite fit into the mold that I was made to believe that I should fit in. And I started to think that maybe that's okay. And I started to think that there is a lot of things that I should look at within myself and within the world so that I can become a happier person, because I think that back then I might have been a little bit bitter, maybe also about being made to or trying to fit into this mold, right? So I could just tell something shifted. Honestly, back then I had very little confidence. I just knew that I could never fit into this role that I was supposed to fill. And I could just tell that with like every fiber of my being, that I was just like, no, this isn't it. This is not the right direction. And I felt very, very strongly about that, to a point that I just couldn't ignore it, right? So all of the things that I did, or the ticket that I bought, the trip that I planned, I did that in fear and with a lot of doubt. And I did not know what was going to happen, right? I was super stressed out. It's a super difficult thing to move beyond your comfort zone. But that was the single most important thing to do in my life, because that is what opened up all of these other opportunities and all of this like new perspective and mindset that started to shape once some of the things started to work out. And that's why in my TED talk, I say, it's not about, building up the confidence. I think a lot of people really get lost in, hey, I have to read all of the self-development books and I have to shift my mindset. For me, that was quite different. I had very little confidence. I had a lot of fear, but I was like, I have to give myself a chance. And I just started to try and take a very like rational and strategic approach to what do I need to do in order to achieve this goal. I did not think that I can achieve the goal. I was just like, theoretically, what would I need to do? And once I looked at the actual steps, that is when I found it quite hard to not take them. So I started to take the steps while still being in doubt about the entire thing. But taking those steps, like having those wins, like with VideoVisit, where people really liked the product and we had this big impact, those were all things that started to reinforce that I was on the right path. And those are then the things that allowed me to build up like better confidence and self-esteem and all of that. And that is when I became so much more of a confident person and was able to really make that big jump in character development, I would say.
Wow. For my wife and I, we always interested in the equation of the nurture and the nature, right? So if you look at your family and the environment you're growing up, where did that DNA or is the nurture inside of you that made you be able to really put a lot of time to think and make that thinking become a doing so that you can make something happen?
I would just really say that I was a very stubborn child and I simply chose to not really accept the reality that I was presented with. So with a lot of like expectations that were put on me, I was simply like, nope, that's not going to be me. And I always had a bit of that within me to be sort of more like stubborn, maybe. But I think that is what also allowed me to be more focused on what really serves me, because I think everyone has like different passions. Like everyone is a different person. Not everyone needs to be like an entrepreneur. Not everyone needs to be a singer or a teacher, for example, right? We all have our unique strengths, and there are so many paths in life that you can take that are completely legit and that people can be super happy with. It's just that in the environment where I grew up, a lot of those expectations that were put on me were simply never aligned with my character, to be honest. So it was a very important step for me to make the conscious decision to step out of that and choose to do right by myself, because I would have never been good at those things that I was supposed to do, nor would I have been happy, and that would have served no one, right?
Yeah. So during that time, so whose advice did you seek?
During the time where I decided to book my flight?
Yes.
No one's. Actually, no one's.
Wow.
I did have some close friends that I would say there were probably like two very close friends that were very supportive. I did less seek advice and more be like, hey, I'm gonna go to South Korea. And they were just very supportive of that, and that gave me a lot of emotional like strength to pull through. And I really, even during being like in Korea and being like 9 hours or 8 hours, I think, time difference, the sort of like friendships really were still maintained, and it was a very important support system for me while being in Korea. But of course, I also made some friends in Korea, so that definitely helped later on. But during the decision, I was really just coming back, and I was like, I'm gonna go back, and no one can stop me.
So,
I always like to say I was a very stubborn and very courageous 19-year-old.
wow. I think that that's a gift, right? And sometimes you have to leverage that gift in the world that maybe is people don't understand. And if you keep following advices from their words, then maybe we just fit into the mold that they design for us, like you say. So sometimes if you want to get out of that, you have to break that circle for you to get into a different world, right? And from a village of from a city of 1,000 people populations and to South Korea is totally different. It's pretty noisy. That it's pretty like crowded there also. What did you do at the first couple of weeks or so to get you really outside of your comfort zone and fit and live well in the new culture though?
Oh, that's another good question. I have to think back. So originally I booked an Airbnb, and they kind of like took me out into the city, like we did karaoke and all of that. And that got me a little bit more into the culture as well. And then I had to immediately find a job, right? I didn't go to Korea with a lot of savings, like not at all. I had enough for maybe 1 or 2 months. And basically, I then found that job, and that was the next step in a routine. Like I just very quickly tried to build up a routine to have this sort of like guardrails to work with. And I just went out in the city and I looked at all of the different places and I tried to make new friends. But I was also a bit lucky because one of the people that I knew from Germany happened to be coincidentally in Seoul at the same time, which I didn't know. And this is insane, but we actually ran into each other in Seoul, like a 20 million, whatever people metropolis. We ended up running into each other. So for the first few weeks, I was also just hanging out with him and his friends. And that made it a lot easier to get a bit better, like integrated into the culture. But I also feel like I just had to, right? Like I put myself in a situation. I bought the ticket. The ticket had a flight back in, like, I don't know, 10, 11, whatever months later. And I was like, okay, my goal is to make it work, right? I have a 12-month visa. I came here, I have like money for 2 months. My goal is to make enough money to stay here for the entirety of the 12 months because I needed to prove something to myself. I wanted to prove to myself that I can make it on my own, which was a very important thing as well. And I would say I'm sort of a bit of a competitive person. So I had set that goal to myself. I had mentioned it to other people. And at that point, I just feel like I have to make this work because I didn't want to live with that not working out. So I pretty much put myself in a situation where I dropped myself into the cold water, right? I had to swim. And since I had to swim, I did somehow make it work. I started off as a waitress, and I looked for different job opportunities. And I had all these sort of little odd jobs. And eventually I would run into someone that had a startup that gave me a job in their startup, right? So a lot of lucky things also happened, but a lot of me also putting myself in situations where I was able to turn out to be lucky, right? Going out, meeting people, being open about opportunities. I would say that was a pretty common theme of what I did, and which is how I was sort of able to turn out to be the lucky one in some of these regards as well.
Wow. You use the word luck. I don't think so. It's
a mix of everything.
It's a mix of everything.
I like to acknowledge the component of luck as well. It was a lot of hard work, right? Like I have to mention, I did work in the very early stages of my career, 80 to 100 hour weeks consistently, which was a little insane. Then I went down to maybe 70 hours. I worked like at times like 2 full-time jobs at the same time. And that's all that I did just to build up a reputation, to build up connections, to build up skills. And so it was a ton of work. But I also have to admit that I did set myself up sometimes to be lucky because to a degree, I was lucky that that first opportunity came around.
Yeah.
And I also put myself in a position where I was able to meet these people, right? That would give me this first opportunity until I had some sort of reputation and social proof and track record, right? Getting this first job is really hard, especially because I had not studied, right? I only had a high school diploma. I did not do a bachelor's at that time. And that in Germany is a little bit hard to find a marketing position without having that formal education. So that's why I say to a degree, there was a component of luck, but the rest was also a lot of hard work. I definitely did walk the extra mile for a lot of miles. But I think also in the past few years, I've really started being like more strategic. And a lot of that is also just putting myself in front of different opportunities and trying different things to see what works best for me, what sort of sticks, right?
Yeah. I always like the talk from Steve Jobs when he said that, you cannot connecting the dot forward, but you can only see the dots connecting backwards, right? So all the little things that you did when you were young, you love Korean music and Japanese music, and it built the love for the cultures, right? And little things you do in terms of marketing contents and everything that made you to build that skill set and that interest.
Yeah.
So one day that getting you to the door, right?
Johanna, it's sort of this crazy butterfly effect, right?
It is, right? So sometimes we do things we don't know what it will leading us to. So I want people to have the courage to keep doing that, to keep walking, follow the heart, right? There's one thing in here you shared that really, really interests me because it's really also another pivot table, point in your life is like this. When you a big part of your life earlier was to think about what to do for you, what to make it happen for you, what to make it right for you, what it make that, success for you. But then from the moment you say yes to the friends and moving on to that hackathon, right? It's a shifting from yours onto the user, which is the people who receiving ends of the product of the services.
Yeah.
And you make it really, really beautiful. So how did you make that shift, from one nest to others?
I think that's an interesting part also of self-discovery, right? When we're young, we're very much thinking within the me. And a lot of the things that I did, like I taught myself design at 13, for example. I was just like, oh yeah, I like this, right? And I taught myself digital marketing at 17 to be an influencer because I wanted to be a little bit famous, right? So it's a lot of it is like centered a little bit from ego, and the hackathon was in a way a good instrument for a mental shift, because as part of the hackathon I had to think about what to build for other people. And I think walking out of that, I started to think more about what are my unique talents and how can they benefit society. And I think that's how we find more of our strengths. It reminds me a little bit of like the Japanese like ikigai concept, like what makes me money, what am I like good at, and so on. But I do feel like that is a very good concept, because I felt with what I can build as a product manager, as a startup founder, as a mentor, and so on, it is just tapping into the strengths that I have to build something from an empathetic viewpoint that benefits individuals, companies, society, and so on. Like, it depends a little bit on what I'm working on, right? With VideoVisit, it was very much focused on reconnecting families. And then I built other tools that helped make people's workday easier, right? Through like productivity tools, very different focus. But in all of these situations, it's really more about empathizing with other people and understanding what they need and what their problems are, and then using my skill set and my problem solving skills to find the right solution for that. And I think in a sense, you're right to point out that the hackathon was probably the key shifting point that I had in thinking, because the first product that I built, I did very much build it to a degree as a solution to my own problem. But the second product I built was around other people's problems. And ever since, I've been more focused on that.
And how that shift you inside of you?
Sorry?
How does that shifting, having the feeling inside of you?
I think it's just a step towards, like, it was a step towards maturity to a degree, right? The hackathon was one thing, but overall there were just several steps over my journey where I started to adopt more this sort of thinking, where I started to look more inside and try to keep the ego out of the equation. Because I think a lot of things, and based on a lot of people that I talk to, that we want in life, a lot of those are things that we think we have to want, or status symbols and so on. It's not what we might actually want or be content with, right? And at the same time, over a longer period of time, like this is basically what my early 20s were like, there was a lot of self-discovery and identity crisis connected to that self-discovery, in finding out what it is that I truly want and how I can truly contribute. I do think that that's a lifelong journey, because things always change, right? We oftentimes think, or at least that's what I noticed, that it's a cultural thing also, to be fair. Oftentimes success is only considered success when it's in perpetuity. But that's not my perspective, right? I think if someone has a great marriage for 10 years and then they decide that it's maybe not the best thing to continue and they split, to me, that's not a failure. To me, that is a successful marriage for 10 years, right? And I think having this sort of perspective that we can always reinvent ourselves And it's not a failure to reinvent yourself, right? I shifted from being an entrepreneur, like for now, right? From being a 2-time startup founder to being a product manager. I did not do that because I consider myself to be a failed entrepreneur. I do not consider myself to be a failed entrepreneur at all. VideoVisit was quite a big social impact that we had there. But what I realized is that I really like being a product manager. And I really like that more than being an entrepreneur at this stage of my life. Now, might that look different 10 years from now? It might. But neither of these things is what I would consider a failure in and of itself. It's sort of a recalibration, finding a new passion, shifting. And I think being adaptable in life, adaptable and resilient, is the key to building a life that is successful by your own standards.
Wow. Beautiful. You mentioned one word in this conversation is repeatedly, and that is the word I think. All right. And my wife and I, we've been on the quest to help people to improve their ability to think, because there's so many things that distracting us and diminishing our thinking capability these days, right? So, Johanna, help us to understand what is the secret behind your, how have you been growing your ability to think over the years?
Oh, my ability to think. I think I've read a few books for sure, but a lot of the things I've honestly just found within myself through life experience, through things that happened, things that didn't go well. I would say actually particular things that don't go well are usually the learning moments, right? If you're open to it. So whenever something doesn't work out the way I want it to, whether it's a friendship, a relationship, a job, or anything else, I like to look a lot inside and analyze it, why that happened. And that usually allows me to find new like things that I should tackle from a character perspective, from a mindset perspective, but also from a business perspective as well. Like classic, maybe I'm making a mistake and then I just look into that and I try to learn from it and I improve my business skills, for example. And I do that with almost like with literally every aspect of my life. And I really shifted towards being very conscious around all different areas of my life. So what I do pretty much like once a year, sometimes more often, is I do this wheel of life exercise, which is where you're writing down where you are in every single area. Friendships, relationships, job, community, contribution, right? It's not only focused on material things, but really on everything beyond. So it really shows you all the different areas that you have in your life. So you want to rate where you currently are from 0 to 10, how you feel about it, and then how you want to feel in the future. And I use that to set like yearly goals, and I try to be realistic about it. I think being realistic with your habits and your improvements is the key to not being frustrated by them. So I try to be realistic and not be like, okay, right now everything is a 5 and in 1 year everything's going to be a 10. I try to find like focus points. Okay, this year I want to focus more on career and physical health, for example. So I start building up that routine. And then next year, maybe it's more about spirituality and I may be starting to do yoga and meditate or something like that, right? And I think that was the biggest shift in thinking that I had in my life, because it really showed me where I stand in terms of how content I am and how I actually can improve my quality of life. And I think oftentimes what I see people doing is, I mean a lot of people that are not super happy with where they are, but they don't think about where they would need to be or what they would need to change in order to feel more content. Because I think at the end of the day, to me, success in life also means being content within where you are, within the moment, with the path that you've taken, and not just, of course, material success, right? So I really liked this exercise because it made me think more strategically about creating a life that I find enjoyable.
Wow. Johanna, a lot of things that you're sharing is really wise and is a wisdom that a lot of people uh, should listen to and have reflection time to think about that. I've been running a 50 interviews on the topic of wisdom from people in different countries and different fields, and ask them about how can we grow wisdom in life, and help people to bridge that gap through wisdom in life also, Johanna. So you have a very interesting journey, and it's self-discovery, self-inventions, and in that journey you bring a lot of different minds, different people into your circle to co-create and to create something amazing. That is journey of making impact. And the saying that is our value is our worth is the sum of the 5 people in our lives, right? So for you, who are the 5 people you bring into your life, Johan?
Oh, honestly, I'm not a big fan of the 5 people thing. Because for one reason, bear with me. I think oftentimes people construe that in a way that, well, you only need like 5 rich friends and then you're going to be rich too. And I think to a degree, of course, the people that you connect with have this big impact. But I think what some people do because of that is that they become very transactional in who they choose to be in their circle. And that is what I don't like, because I think there are many different types of friends that you can have that can be super beneficial. And that can be someone who's like super supportive. And then you maybe have that super ambitious friend, but then you also have that friend who helps you come a little bit down when you're too ambitious, right? Who keeps you a little bit grounded and connected. So I'm really more looking for balance. So I have friends who are very spiritual. I have friends who are very creative, very ambitious, people that work in technology or finance. I have people that have very little ambition, but they're more grounded and they keep me grounded. And I'm really seeking this sort of balance and just finding people that I can genuinely connect with, and where I say, I just like being on a journey with them. I just like being on a journey with them, seeing them grow. They like seeing me grow. We support each other. And I think that's a really important thing where I'm looking into my friend cycle. So I would say I'm very selective, but more about finding people that I genuinely connect with rather than finding someone that has to fit this like perfect image that I make out in my head.
Beautiful, beautiful. 2 last questions for this conversations, okay? Because we're reaching to the end of our schedule. So the first question of the 2 is you've been meeting a lot of amazing people in this world through your works also. If you can pick one word of wisdom or one word of advice from any of them that you remember the most up until today, what would that story or advice be?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll have to think on that for a minute. The best advice I've ever gotten. I would definitely say the best advice I've ever gotten, like along the lines, right? I don't remember it verbatim, but is to just be who you are and be like authentic and confident. Because as soon as you try to copy someone else, at best you're going to be a bad copy of them.
Wow.
And I think in order to be like successful, no matter what you do, whether you're talking about art or an entrepreneur, if you're not authentic, if you're trying to copy someone else and have this like hedge around you, people feel it. No matter how, like usually how good of an actor you might be or might not be, I think people feel it when someone is being inauthentic. And I think it then prevents you from finding the sort of connections that you need to build a great life. And so I think that that's a really good thing to take into consideration. And it was good advice to me because I feel like I was trying so much to fit in. But I never really quite did. And sort of tapping more into the strengths that I had and the person that I am is what, at the end of the day, really allowed me to build the career I've built, but also to have really good friendships and connections.
Wow, wow. We've been traveling to the past. We've been talking a lot about the past, the present. It's not fair. We're not talking about the future. Okay. So, Johanna, is there anything exciting you are working on that you are happy you want to share with us that we are celebrating with you in advance?
I usually like to not share my goals so publicly. But I've basically just last year moved to the United States. And I've now been accepted for a green card. So I am immigrating to the United States now, and I'm going to continue building my career here. And to a degree, I think it's at first going to be very much looking similar to what I did in Germany, you know, giving talks and mentoring people and continuing to build in tech. And then let's see what the next few years will bring. And what the end game will be here.
And the movement is how you responded to the signs that happen in your life, right? So I believe that is always leading to something beautiful ahead. So along the way, if you have any exciting share, and there's we can celebrate in advance, okay?
Absolutely.
Hey, Johanna, thank you very much for spending your evening joining to share your story with us. We love you, and we look forward to seeing you in person one day, okay?
Yeah, I look forward to that. I'll let you know if I ever make it to Vietnam.
Or if we go to America, we go there often. So you have a wonderful evening, okay?
You too.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.